off. There was joists up there and all kinds of sheet metal and things like that. So we began taking those down and broke out the sledgehammers and really just started getting to work at breaking the walls down. They were old block walls, so they came down pretty easy. As you can tell, that last picture, it's pretty well gone. We did a pretty good job, if I do say so. But it was really a pretty difficult day, given our first day we were there. As Jesse alluded to, we were all very tired from the trip down and just lack of sleep and things like that. But God really helped us that day to do His will. He had a plan for us. And I had a pretty scary experience this day. We had began knocking walls down, and there was 2 remaining walls left. And as you can see, so there's an outer wall on this first picture. We were knocking down the wall kind of facing us, and it was just one last wall, and we're like, we could probably just push it down. It was super weak. We could probably just push it down and just break it up there instead of having to tear it all down, block by block. So me and Eli, who most of you know, he was down there with us, we get behind that wall, and we start pushing. So we're between the outer wall, and we're between the other wall, as you might say, a rock and a hard place. And so we kind of put our hands on it, we kind of started rocking it, and it just was bouncing back and forth, and we finally started feeling it give way. And as it started to fall, I happened to look up, and the top of the wall had cracked and was falling backwards, right to where we were standing, and there was nowhere for us to go. And as it fell, it came incredibly close. There is a video if you want to see. It's quite the shock. Especially to me when the wall fell and I was standing there surrounded by this crumbled wall. But the more that I came to think about it, I was so thankful that God protected me that day. Jesse said as he watched it happen, he said he saw it clip the brim of my hat. And it could have been a very disastrous day if that was to have come any closer. And it really stood out to me as I began to think about it more that God had a plan for me that day. He had a plan for me to be there, and He had a plan for me to be protected. He had something in store for me that day that was not to spend it in the hospital, not to break something. And the more that I applied that, He has a plan for my life. I'm so thankful for the way that He's been working in my life, and it really touched me. Just the way that He sought me out. I know that He has a plan for me, and I'm just incredibly grateful for His protection that day and His way that He's been working in my life. I just give Him all the praise and all the glory.
While the guys were demolishing, the girls were painting, and there was quite a lot to cover. And as you can kind of see where the water line was, and then by the end of the day, there was a nice fresh coat of paint over that parsonage, which is actually where they're meeting right now for church. And so the lady, it's actually a lady pastor there, she was so excited. She was so excited about that whole change in that house there. And so going along with what Blake said, we're definitely incredibly thankful for His protection on Blake and Eli. And we're going to continue on. There's lots more to share.
Good. So the next day, we headed off to the youth camp, and that day was interesting. So us guys were staying at the church, and we went and ate at the Mirandas, and then we came back. And when we came back, there were a lot of kids, and it was like, wow, there's a lot of people already here. And our bus had gotten delayed, and so we all went into the church, and we actually kind of just all the youth. There was no adults or anything. We were sitting in there. We just started singing. They had like chorus books, and we started just singing hymns. And but when we sang, we tried our best to sing in Spanish. And then they wanted us to sing some songs in English, so we did that too. And that was really cool. We didn't know there was only a couple other people in there. It was very fun. And then finally the bus got there, and we all climbed on the bus, and it was packed. Me and Blake are pretty big guys, and it was hard to fit on that bus. You couldn't sit in it straight because the seats were so close together. Me and Blake had to sit in the aisle halfway. Um, but there was, it was obviously full, and I kind of had gotten on there at the end, and so there was a young man. He had been in the church when we were singing. I hadn't talked to him a whole lot or anything, but I was like, "Hey, can I sit here?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." So I sit down, and it was like, sitting there like, yeah, I don't really know what to say, thinking like, okay, how do I say this and this? And so I asked him what his name was, and his name was Isak. And we just kind of got to talking. It was like a 2-hour drive to the camp. And by the end, we were laughing, and we were talking, and by the end of camp, we found out he actually knew a lot of English. We would be like, one day I came up to him, I was like, "Isak, you know English, don't you?" And he said, No. And I was like, "How'd you just know what I said?" But he was one of our best friends throughout the whole time, and it was really cool to be able to talk to somebody, and we didn't know the same language, but we could tell jokes, we could have fun, and there was one night he went up and prayed, and we all went and prayed with him, and it was special to be able to make a friendship that is lasting. He texted me, we've talked since Honduras, and it's cool that there's a relationship built there. But
Well, I'm talking about youth camp also, so sorry. So at youth camp it's all Honduras people, which is awesome, but it was kind of a culture shock because I was not, I guess, expecting what happened to happen. So basically, we all got there and we don't speak their language. We're in a new culture, a new climate, everything's different, and there was new food and new people, and everything was just way different than we were used to. So by the first night at youth camp in the girls' room, we were dishing it out pretty heavy on the complaints, unfortunately. And it was like all these different things that just seemed like inconveniences to us that we're just not used to. And we were talking about it and stuff, and then I realized that, and I was like, I kind of was just sick of all the complaints, even though I had complained enough myself, and I was like, you know what, I don't want to complain anymore for the rest of this trip if possible, which I still did some, but I was like, I'm gonna try not to do that. And I was like, Lord, just help me to make the most of what we have, because we can't change where we're at, but I can at least, he helped to change my perspective and see how I could be used and how that I can still communicate with the people even though I don't speak Spanish very well and they don't speak English very well at all. So it really worked out, and all the minor inconveniences that seemed big at one moment turned very small, and they just kind of didn't matter anymore by the time we got to church, because like every service was an altar call, and it was amazing to see how many people just went up there not thinking a thing of it and praying. And once I made a friend, and she wanted me to go with her up to the altar, and I was like, okay, well, here that's kind of unusual for somebody to drag you along with them. Well, I went, and so I ended up praying with her, and I can't speak Spanish enough to pray like that, and so I tried to do what I could and speak in English and communicate with God through and to her, and it was amazing that he just used that moment, and I could just tell like his spirit was just there and like working in her life and working in my life. And every service that we had, I was pretty much up at the altar praying with people, and it was such a blessing. It was like, all these things that seem like such a big deal do not matter, and they don't really bother me. Like, that is worth it to me, to get up there and pray with somebody that you can just have a connection with, even though you can't really speak very well with them. It was worth all the different things that seemed to be a problem. So I'm thankful that he helped change my perspective and make the most of it. I don't know that I've really been one to just make the most of life and everything and every day, but there I realized that life is a lot better when you just make the most of what you've been given, even if it doesn't seem normal or like a bunch. And so I'm just like changed after that, and it was amazing. So I'm really thankful for the new perspective he gave me, and that I can communicate, and he showed me that I can be a blessing to other people, which turned out to be a bigger blessing, it felt like, to me. So I'm just glad that we got to go on this trip.
Well, as you can see, we did a lot of painting, but thankfully I like to paint, so that was okay. Um, Overall, just on this trip, I felt such a kindred spirit with the people, and I feel like God really taught me how if you make yourself available, you can do little things, but it shows such a bigger purpose. It shows like we're there to just to love them, and like we're all connected with the same God. And with the painting especially, it just touched me how grateful they were just for us to work and help. Because I mean, I could think like, man, I'm not a preacher. I can't go preach to them in Spanish, obviously. But it's like that's one thing that I can do. We can do the little things for them, and also an illustration kind of with paint. It makes such a difference. It's such a little thing, but it can make a place look brand new. And I'm thankful that that's the same with God. How we can be broken and He can make us new. So, if you want to go to the next, you can see the after picture.
That was two different places. The first place was at San Pedro Sula, which is where the guys were staying actually downstairs. And you can see they painted the outside there. They also painted the inside, and we did some other minor repairs around there. And then the next, we did that on Monday afternoon after camp. So we came back Sunday evening. We were very tired, and then we let them sleep in that Monday morning, and then we went there and started painting. And then the next day we finished up what we had started. And so we started there in the morning, and we thought that things were, I think they thought they were going to be done for the day. And we loaded up and we're like, oh, we're going to go to another place and start working there. And that's this church here. Now, this church, it's kind of hard to really see with the perspective, but it's actually quite large church. And we walked in, and my father-in-law's like, well, we're going to paint the whole sanctuary. And at this point, it's like 3 in the afternoon. And we're like, oh, okay. We're going to be here for a long time. And they were looking at me like, there's no way we can do this. I'm like, well, it's not going to get done by not starting. So let's just start. And whatever we get done, we get done. Whatever we don't get done, we don't get done. And I'm pretty sure Brother Menanda's going to be okay with whatever happens. And we kind of had a plan at first. Like, if things are going slow, let's just not start painting randomly down here. Let's stay together, And so we started, and we got the whole thing done that night. And the pastor was right there, and we were getting a picture, and we're like, you need to get in the picture. And he came running in, and he slid on the floor. He's like, we're done, It was exciting, and like she said, it was exciting, even though there was a lot of work. And I mean, I think we finished up around 8 o'clock, and that was honestly really good when we all pitched in, and we painted the entire thing. We figured out the square footage that we painted. It was over 8,000 square feet that we painted during our time in Honduras. So a lot of painting.
Well, this next place, if we thought that the other things were hard, this was a mountain we took out, basically. So this day, we were completely exhausted by the end of the day. But one thing Tanessa said when we were all talking about it is, she's like, even though we were working so hard, we were having so much fun. And one thing at this place that stood out to me, well, actually, okay, in general, one thing that stood out to me is the friendships. Like Timmy mentioned earlier, the friendships that we made were amazing. I was expecting to make friends, but I wasn't expecting how difficult, I guess, it would be to leave and to have to say goodbye to everyone. And specifically, one thing here was I realized how even the little things that seem kind of unimportant, kind of how Jill said, mean so much to someone. Just reaching out and even trying to talk to someone, even if you don't completely understand their language, can't completely fully understand what they're saying, but even just reaching out and being a friend to them just means so much.
For example, there was this girl there. There were multiple ladies there, multiple guys there. But this one girl, I ended up talking to her as best I could, and I found out she was the same age as I was, and talked to her tiny bit at the beginning, in the middle-ish, and then at the end, I was talking to her a little bit. And we were standing there, we were getting ready to leave, and she had on a necklace. And I said something like, "Your necklace is pretty." And she said something, she was like, "Thank you," and then she started saying something else, and I had no idea what she was saying. And I was just like, okay, looking for an interpreter, but nobody's around. What do I do? But it was fine. But she ended up taking off her necklace and starts handing it to me. And I was like, no, like, that's yours. Like, don't give that to me. And she was persistent. Yes, take this. And so she ended up giving it to me. And I was kind of like, I don't know what to do. Like, I hope she wasn't thinking that I was saying, like, give me your necklace, when I was saying it's pretty. And so I ended up going to David, Audie's brother, and I was like, is this a normal thing? Like, I hope she understood me. And he was like, if she gave it to you, that's a gift. She wanted to give that to you. And that just stood out to me. I was like, wow, I didn't feel like I was I felt that I was inadequate in trying to communicate and trying to be a friend, but it just really stood out to me how being a friend, even in the smallest ways, is something that just means so much to people. And I want to make sure that I am being that way no matter where I am. I want to make sure that I'm shining for Jesus and reaching out to people no matter where I am. And another thing that stood out to me was God's faithfulness. His amazing faithfulness is just something that I felt was in every single service that we were in. And all the songs we sang, their worship was amazing. It impacted me so much. But I was just struck by how amazing our God is and how we can be in a completely different country, completely different culture, and God's faithfulness is so true, and he will always remain faithful to me, to you, to everyone. He will always be with us. He will never leave us, and I'm just so thankful for this time we got.
Well, the trip to the mountains for me was a little bit different than everybody else's experience. I was actually really sick. I got sick on the way there, and it might sound crazy, but I was so sad that I couldn't work. I was fully expecting to go there, work hard, have fun, meet new people, but God had a different plan. As soon as I got there, one of the ladies put her arm around me. She walked me into the house. She made me some hot tea. She actually gave me some of her clothes because being sick, I had basically ruined my clothes. She gave me her clothes. She made me a separate meal that everyone else had, like baleadas, which was delicious, and I was very sad. But she made me like soup for my stomach. She put me in her bed, turned on her fan, and I know that some of those things she did weren't easy for her because they don't have a lot. They don't have a lot of resources, and she just basically gave me so much, and I just felt so blessed. And I really felt like God used this trip to show me that in my own way, when I was going there, I was planning on giving them the blessing. It was kind of selfish, honestly. I was looking forward to, working and kind of being like a savior to them, and that is not at all what I'm supposed to do. But as I was there, I realized that, honestly, I had to kind of give up what I was wanting to do to receive a blessing. And the blessing I received was probably greater than anything I could have done for them. I just felt, I don't know how to explain it, just so full of God's presence. I was laying there in bed, and I could hear everybody outside laughing and having fun and working, and I kind of felt like a failure. I was like, I'm not even doing anything. I'm just laying here sick. But I really felt God's presence. The people, she kept coming in and checking on me, bringing me water, and she was just so sweet, and I just felt like God really used the experience to show that I'm not the one that I can't go there and I can't fix everything, but I can receive the blessing that God has for me. And I'm just so thankful that he used this trip. Even though I was sick, I wouldn't change a thing because I learned so much, and I'm very grateful.
I also want to share something about this day. As Jaylyn was mentioning, it was a very hard day. We did, I think we forgot our mustard seed that day because we did have to move a mountain. But sometimes God uses us to move that mountain. And so my father-in-law had told me what we were going to do. I decided not to tell them until we got there because I thought it might be better that way. And it was a 4-hour trip there in the morning, so we left at 5 in the morning. And we got there, and they tell us the plan for the day, and they hand us the tools, and it was not a jackhammer or a skid steer or a backhoe or anything like that. It was pickaxes, chisels, and hammers. And I'm like, oh boy. And so we started in, and I mean, literally moving a mountain, and we had to fill in some. They'd already had some of the walls poured. The pastor had been doing that, and he's in his 70s and had done that all by himself. And some of the ladies that were there cooking, they did all of that together. And so we started in, and we started moving dirt, filling wheelbarrows, and running down and dumping them and leveling them out. And it was very rocky. And there's a place right there you can see Eli in that first picture, and Timmy. And we were preparing for where the platform will be, and the mountain was there, and so we had to get it down a little bit lower. So they said, "Here's the chisel." Okay, here we go. And we worked at that for a long time. It was extremely hard, and very, very hard labor. And for the first 45 minutes, we thought it had been about 3 hours, and we looked down. I was like, "Oh, it's not even been an hour." And well, be encouraged. Look at all the things we've done in the 45 minutes. Just think about what will happen in 3 hours. And we also were like, think about what the Israelites felt like. They were slaves for 200 years in Egypt, and they didn't get the water breaks that we're getting, and they didn't get the baleadas that we're getting, and they didn't get the all this other food that they're giving us, and we're getting to sit down and don't have anybody whipping us. We have a lot to be thankful for. And so matter of perspective means a lot. And but something that really stood out to me at this place, and we actually had a little small service that day as well. And they have been meeting in their yard and on their porch for I don't know how long, and they're just looking forward to having their own church. And we really just scratched the surface of what needs to be done. I mean, we're getting ready. Now they're almost ready to start building walls, and still a long ways off. And I thought, when this church is complete, it's not going to have air conditioning. It's not going to have heat. It's not even going to have windows. You look at their house. There was no screens in there. There was no windows. But that didn't matter to them. That did not matter to them. And I thought about our own church project that we had at Randolph. The amount of work that I did in that project was hardly anything. We just stood and watched other people build it, and God had supplied the funds to pay for that, and we're so blessed. We don't think about how blessed we truly are. And I started thinking about what is driving them to keep going on with this project. It's so hard. And we were just there for 6 hours. The amount of work that we did on that project was 6 hours, and the pastor told us afterwards we saved him 20 days worth of work by us being there for that 6 hours. And while we were there, the ladies had cooked for us. And as Chloe said, they did a separate meal for her, and it wasn't a gas stove. They started a fire. It was a stone oven outside. That's where they cook. They have an open kitchen, but they're not complaining, and they're actually very content with what they have. They don't want to change. They are very content with what God has blessed them with, and they had cooked throughout the day for us. And I looked over as we're like sweaty, like beyond sweaty, like my pants were a different color by the time I was done there. And my shirt was completely sticking to me, and the dirt that's on my teeth, on everything, you feel just nasty. And I look over, and one of the ladies that's been cooking for us all day, I would say she was probably in her 60s. I looked over, and she's carrying boulders. And I'm like, what is she doing? She wanted to still be a part of building the church. And she had been working for us, feeding us, but yet no, she wanted to be a part. And one of them grabbed the pickaxe. When one of the girls went and sat down, she got up there and she was hitting the mountain. And I'm like, man, these people. And again, what's driving them? Their love and their passion to dwell in a house in God's presence. And we know that we don't have to have a building to be in God's presence, but they were so focused on having a house for God, to meet God. And honestly, that day, so many people showed up for that little afternoon service. I don't even know where they came from. They just appeared, and they just kept coming. And we're like, where did all these people come from? Because there was not hardly anything in that area, and there was a few other houses on up the way, but there were so many people, and they were just there, and they were there to worship. And we had an incredible time with them worshiping God, and we got to even worship with hard labor. And I was just thrilled to get to be a part of that project and to be a part of the passion that they had for that place. And one day, and then my father-in-law, as he was talking to them, he's like, we're getting the groundwork ready, the foundation, and we're going to have a church. We're going to have a church. And everyone was just so excited. And it was just incredible to be a part of that. And I'm just incredibly grateful for all that he did for us in enabling us, giving us the strength to do things that we didn't even think were possible. And again, several times we look, there is no way. Well, we got in there, we did it, God gave us strength, and he enabled it. He always does, and he's going to do that no matter what we come in contact in our life, and I'm thankful for that.
I had a great time on this trip, and I would go back if I had a chance. I had fun at youth camp. Everyone was really nice, and you could see Jesus there. It was a life-changing experience for me. I thank God for the opportunity to go to Honduras.
Well, I enjoyed this trip to Honduras. It was truly an unforgettable experience, and the work we did was, of course, very hard, but it was fulfilling to just see like how our work blessed the people, even though, I mean, like they said, like we were working and I don't know, it just blessed them. Our work, even though, yeah, well, I said that already. And then also the youth camp, it was great, and I'm so glad I got to be a part of that. And the friendships we made, they were so neat. Even though the language barrier was there, we still connected, and like friends like Isak and other people, they just, even though they spoke Spanish, I mean, I don't know very much Spanish, but our communication, it wasn't even that different in my opinion. It still worked out. I could communicate with my team very well, and it was very fun. And the presence of God was just, I could feel it in every service at youth camp, and it was real. And I made lots of friends and memories I'll never forget, and it was an amazing experience, and I'm so glad I got to go.
Well, on the way to the church in the mountains that we were building, we were in the truck, so a bunch of us were in the bed of the truck, and I was just watching all the scenery in the mountains and all the trees just go by, and I was like, God created this in just a few words. How awesome is that? And it just, I don't know, it's so cool to think about that. And like others have said, the youth camp was so fun and so nice, and everybody said, the language barrier is kind of hard, but God doesn't really care about that. He, even though we didn't really know a whole lot what they were saying in the services, you could just feel God's presence, and it was just super cool to see that or feel that, and just, I'm so happy I got to go, and I hope we can go back again.
Okay, so first of all, a few fun things that stood out to me. Youth camp definitely was a highlight. I absolutely loved it. I'd love to go back again, even if it's just for youth camp. I'd love to go and spend time with them. Also, flying, I absolutely loved it. It was my first time, and I'm so glad I got to go. And flying was amazing. But something that kind of stood out to me through the whole time, but mostly looking back on it, I realized, and during youth camp it was emphasis, but I realized there were little things all along the way. There were many opportunities for us to either worry or trust. And even the small things like airport navigation, we just followed our leader and we all got through the airport safely, but we had to trust him that he knew what he was doing, where we were going. On the plane, we trusted the pilot to know, we trusted our pilot, or we sat there worried, but just taking that and trusting that he knows what he's doing, he knows how to control the machine, that's so reassuring. When we were there, we didn't always know we didn't know what we were going to be doing like the whole time. We knew we were there to work, and we knew that the Brother Miranda was going to be in charge of each day. So we didn't know our schedule. So we just had to trust that, you know, he would give us our schedule, and we would be doing everything each day that he said. Sorry, I'm losing my schedule. My place. There was also driving. The traffic's not really like over here. They don't really follow the rules. It's kind of crazy. It's fun, but crazy. Thankfully, I didn't have to drive, but I had to trust my driver because, you know, thankfully Eli and Jesse and Blake took care of that. But we trusted our drivers that they knew what they were doing. Then, like at the youth camp, the main things that like kind of stood out to me was different times that both Eli and Jesse spoke about trusting, and even in different ways. There were things like, I've given you a new name, and things about trusting him with your life. And there were so many situations that I was like, I've been holding on, and they've been tying me in knots, and I just had to give them to Jesus and just trust him. And then once I did that, I was trusting and resting. And when I did that, I had peace. And I just felt like so much like lighter and so much more peace just giving him those things in the services. And I was just, you know, having a hard time trusting with those things. Sorry. I know the pilot of this life, of my life, has the perfect plan. I do not know all the plan, but as I do each day and trust him, in the trusting I have rest. I am safe, and I establish my life in the hands of God of the universe, the creator of all. And he created me. He deserves my dependence on him. I'm thankful for this trip. I'm thankful that I'm learning to trust him. Yeah, I've given my life to Jesus many times, like my surrender all, but sometimes we take those things back, or new situations come that we want to hold on to. So I'm thankful that he used the youth camp to speak to me, and it was really cool to see how they worshiped. I loved worshiping with them, and like someone mentioned, the altar calls were just amazing. Just seeing all the people just flooding the altar. The one night, I think almost every youth was praying at the altar, whether with someone or for themselves. And I'm just thankful that Jesus worked there, and I'd love to go back.
Well, Thursday night was our last night, and that night we were in San Pedro Sula. That's my home church. And Pastor Argentina, she really wanted us to go and do like a special service. And she had thought about the possibility of doing it the first day that we arrived, but we were very tired. We were not ready. We had not practiced the songs in Spanish, because we did sing 3 songs in Spanish. And we had not practiced those with my brother, because he was playing guitar for us. So we didn't do it that day. We did it the day before we were leaving. And I truly believe God helped us. We sang our songs. Each of the youth had a small testimony, and I helped translate. And they also prayed for us. We all went to the altar so they would pray for us for safe travels. And they thanked us for all the work that we did. And Jesse also spoke, and I translated for him as well. And so overall, it was a very good service. God really helped us. It was a little sad, bittersweet. I mean, Honduras is my home, so every time I go, I don't, it's like I'm going for vacation, but this time was definitely not vacation. It was very different. It was a new experience for me as well, because like Jesse said, we were like, oh no, we have so many kids that are going to be under us. I hope they can be fine. So, and they were. We're so thankful. But, that is a big responsibility, and we wanted to take it as serious as we could. So, I was very thankful for everything that we were able to accomplish. I was not in many of the places they were, in fact, because I was in charge of cooking with my mom, and we had to sometimes prepare the food and send it over to them, or we would just wait till they arrive, and before, breakfast was over, we were cleaning. By that time, we had to start lunch. Lunch was over. We would clean. It was time for supper. Supper was over. We had to clean. We couldn't finish cleaning until the next day, and then repeat the same cycle the whole time. So I was in a different place all the time. But I can tell you, I want to share a little bit about the pastors, what they told my dad. They went to several churches, as you saw, and all the pastors, all of them told my dad they were so thankful, and so they felt so blessed for all the work that the young people did at their churches. They were very glad. They were so happy. They were so encouraged for how hard they worked. And the truth is, yes, like Tanessa said, I mean, some of them were struggling. It is a different culture, it is a different language, it's different food, everything is different. And we tried to, kind of like tell them a little bit, like, expect it's very different, but once you're there, it is different. So, I was not sure what they were thinking. I was trying to prepare them as much as I could, but I couldn't do, everything for them. But although they were probably feeling sick, they were feeling tired, none of them really complained while they were working. They all worked really hard. They worked without stopping. They would get little breaks here and there, but they would just not like sit down for hours and just wait for everybody else to do the job. They all worked really hard. They were all very efficient at their jobs, and the pastors were just so impressed of how young all of them are, and they were willing to work very hard and very happily. I was very proud of them because they went out of their way. As we know, the language was a big barrier right there, and I was not able to translate for every one of them and follow them around and be like, okay, wait, let me translate for you, let me see, they're saying this, what do you want to say back? I couldn't do that. I wanted to, but I couldn't. And so I was very proud of them for trying, going out of their way to people that in the community that they didn't even know. And they would go and talk to them and try to use their little limited Spanish that they know, and they still tried. And so I felt very proud of them for trying and not just saying like, no, I don't speak Spanish, so I'm sorry. They did really good. But one thing I do want to share is during youth camp time, one of the guys that is like staff of the youth camp, he knew of a girl that told this testimony to him, and he shared it with me. And I haven't even told the youth, so this is going to be the first time they hear it as well. But one of the girls that went to youth camp, before going to youth camp, she had a big family problem with her family. She was struggling. She didn't want it to go. She wanted to stay home, but her friends were like, come on, let's go. And she had some problems with some friends as well, and she felt like she was alone, and she didn't want it to go. And so they were like, no, come on, you need to go. It's going to be good for you. So, she goes to youth camp, and we're there the first night. That was a very difficult night for all our youth, because that was very different, and they were, I think, in shock, most of them. And so this girl was struggling, and Eli preached that night, and it was a very good message, but this girl felt like she was alone. She had no friends, and that was her specific thing. She said, I just have no friends. I am alone. I have nobody to be here with me and encourage me. I just feel like I'm all alone, like God doesn't even care for me. Well, I don't know which of our girls, I honestly don't know which of the girls was by her side. But she said that as they were doing the altar call, she just, she was bowing her head, and she was kind of like thinking to herself, I really don't want to be here. I have no friends near me, and this is stupid, really. That's what she thought. This is stupid. I don't want to be here. Well, I don't know which girl was there, but she said she felt an arm go around her and said in Spanish to her, "Tú eres mi amiga. You are my friend." And she said that she looked up, and it was one of the Americans, like she said, one of the girls, and she said that she immediately felt like God was like, "You're not alone. You're not alone. I care for you." And so she said she went to the altar, and this girl, this American girl, went with her to the altar and prayed for her and hugged her. And she said, I felt like God was telling me, you do have friends. I'm here for you as well. But she was so shocked that somebody that obviously knew nothing about what she was going through said that phrase that she was struggling with. I have no friends. And then this girl says, you are my friend. And so this girl testified this in church. And they were so touched that somebody that knew nothing about our culture, our language, not even very good Spanish, said this phrase without knowing. And that was definitely God. And she felt so touched by that. And so overall, I'm just very proud of each one of them and thankful for God's help the whole time we were there. And I do hope that we can do it again.
Well, as I said at the very beginning, there's so much that we could say, and if you want to ask more questions, we can talk about it afterwards. But I do want to thank you also for your prayers and your support for this trip. It was truly a rewarding experience for each and every one of us. And thank you for getting on board of that and supporting our young people. And all the funds came in for it, which was a miracle, really. It's a huge mountain that we were looking at the very beginning, and that God supplied the need. And as a result, we were actually able to be a little under our budget. We asked you for 22.5, and that's what came in. And we came back spending 21.7. And so we were actually, that's not correct. It was 21.3, right? Is that what it was? 21.300 around those. That's a rough estimate. And something that we haven't settled exactly on, but I just want to they don't know about this, and I'm just letting you know. We found out while we were there that they have a need in their church. In San Pedro Sula, one of the boys had been picking up kids in the area to take them to church, and he had issues with his car. And he actually told his testimony the one night at church, and it was something that he was surrendering to God. And in that, we talked with my father-in-law afterwards, and I was saying, is there something that if we have a little extra money afterwards, I would like to be able to put that towards something that you guys need to, God blessed us, we want to bless them. And he said, honestly, we are saving money for a bus for our church. And he's like, we've been raising some money for it, and a lot has come in, and but we still lack some. And I'm going to talk with him and to see exactly what they're remaining. But what has come in from last year and even into this year, we have enough money that I think that we could really put that towards a bus and possibly even get that bus purchased for them. Not only will that be a blessing for them and in their future, you never know what's going to happen with that endeavor. And that's not really something that you see very often, of buses being used for outreach. And that's something that's starting there in San Pedro Sula. And I'm really excited about this opportunity, and it's because you gave and others giving, and that we're able to pass that on to others. And so I just thank you again for your support, your prayers for us. It was definitely, we felt your prayers on our way back. We could have had such delays and cancellations, but we didn't, and I praise God for that. And we thank you for being the support for us, and I believe we're going to make plans to return, and we'll see what God wants to do with us next. And we're going to finish up by singing one song that we sang there, and it's entitled The Goodness of God. And I think you'll recognize it. We're going to sing it in Spanish, and I think the words are going to be up there in English. And if you know it, I'd encourage you to sing along with us. But God truly is a good God, and the blessings that he bestows upon us, and it's a privilege, an honor to get to share that with others. I thank him for that.
Praise the Lord. Did you enjoy that today? I want to publicly say that I so appreciate our youth and the leadership of our youth. Number one, having the vision to go, and then doing all that was necessary to get it organized and get it together to go, and then that they went and, as was already shared, truly put themselves into it, even in the midst of the hindrances of the language barrier. But it just shows you when we're willing to do our part, God is amazing at doing His part. And I know that even when they started out raising funds, $22,500 sounds like a lot of money, and it is, as a matter of fact. But I can remember the last Sunday night that they were raising. The Lord opened the door and gave them the vision to go to different churches, kind of like deputation, and we'll just see what comes in, and we'll work on raising the rest. And I think when they came into that Sunday night service, that at that time they thought was the last, they needed about, I think maybe 6,000 or so to hit the 22,000 mark. And we thought, well, if we get 2 or 3 tonight, that'd be great. And here that night, $8,000 came in the offering that one service. And so it really took them over the top of 22.5. And then, as he already shared, they didn't quite even need that. So now they're going to be able to share that back with others. So it just thrills me. The Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And it thrills me that they not only had the vision, that's where it has to start, but they were able to carry through with the vision and accomplish. Sometimes it stops with the vision, and yet when you're willing to do your part to carry it through, God honors that, and He has. So I just publicly commend our youth and our youth leadership for that. And this doesn't necessarily represent, obviously, all of our young people. These were just the ones that worked out that they could go. I think there were others that would have liked to have gone. It just didn't work out for more to go. But in a sense, that was a pretty sizable crowd for that type of a trip. And so we're just thankful for how it worked out. But thank you for being here this afternoon. Continue to pray for our home mission outreach program there at New Westville, the Community Bible Church. Continue to pray for our youth. Continue to pray that God will continue to direct them. One of the things that I noticed, and I picked up from different ones of them, was that God showed them the value of being thankful for what we have. So many times we take for granted what we have, just like normally to move that mountain we'd use a backhoe or an excavator or something. Well, they had to use picks and axes or whatever they had available there, and yet God honored that. And so they recognized that those people there were willing to be grateful with what they had. Sometimes we're guilty here of whining and complaining of what we don't have when we need to be thankful for what we do have. And we're so blessed. So, again, thank you for being here this afternoon. And I remind you, our evening service tonight is at 7:30. I look forward to seeing all of you back and more. And let's look forward to what God has in store for us tonight. Let's stand together. And you are dismissed.